Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be talking about something that I think is super relevant to, well, pretty much all of us. We're going to be looking at how love and money mix together in relationships.
Oh, yeah.
You guys sent in some really interesting material on this.
Yeah.
We decided to dig into it. We're going to talk about things like how important is financial compatibility really?
Mm-hmm.
Can money actually make a relationship stronger?
Right.
Or is it just kind of a recipe for stress and arguments?
Yeah.
And what about being financially independent when you're also part of a couple?
It's a really interesting area.
It is.
We always think about love as like this purely emotional thing, right?
Right.
But the reality is that finances play a huge role
They do.
in how relationships actually function,
Mm.
whether they thrive or just survive, or in some cases, fall apart.
Yeah. Okay, so let's unpack this idea of financial compatibility a little bit first. One of the things that really jumped out at me from the podcast episode that you shared was this whole concept of money scripts.
Yes.
Like we all have these unconscious beliefs about money, right?
Right.
That we kind of pick up in childhood.
Mhm.
And sometimes those scripts can clash big time
Absolutely, they do. Yeah.
in relationships.
The podcast host actually gave this example of a couple where one person grew up thinking that money was meant to be enjoyed, like live for today, spend it.
Yeah.
And the other one was taught to save for a rainy day, like almost to the point of hoarding it.
Right.
And of course, it led to some, conflicts and arguments.
Yeah, I can see how that would cause some friction.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
It makes me think, have you ever noticed any of these like money scripts playing out in your own relationships?
I think it's fascinating how those scripts often run so deep
Mm-hmm.
that we don't even realize they're driving our behavior.
Yeah.
We might be reacting from a place of childhood scarcity
Right.
or fear, and our partner's totally in the dark.
Yeah, you're not even speaking the same language.
You're not. You're speaking a totally different language.
Now, building on this idea of clashing money styles,
Yeah.
the podcast also had this segment on, you guessed it, the spender versus saver dynamic.
Yeah.
But they went beyond just kind of like the usual stereotypes, right?
Yes.
They talked about how these differences can actually reveal deeper needs and anxieties.
Yes.
So, for instance, the saver might be clinging to money out of insecurity,
Right.
while the spender is actually trying to, like, fill some kind of emotional void.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's such a good point. It's
Yeah.
not just about being frugal or extravagant. It's what those spending habits represent
Yeah.
on a deeper level. If you don't unpack that,
Yeah.
then you just keep going around and around in circles.
The arguments never stop.
They don't.
Okay. So let's shift gears for a minute and talk about the impact of money on the overall well-being of a relationship. Because the research you sent over really hammered home this point, that financial stress can be incredibly corrosive to a relationship.
It's so true.
Yeah.
When you're constantly worried about making ends meet or feeling resentful about how money's handled, it's really hard to maintain a sense of connection and intimacy with your partner.
Yeah, there was actually this really striking statistic in one of the articles.
Okay.
Money problems are consistently ranked as one of the top reasons couples break up.
It makes sense when you think about it,
Yeah.
Financial strain often leads to anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
resentment,
Yeah.
even shame or guilt.
Yeah,
Those emotions don't just disappear, they seep into every aspect of the relationship.
totally. It becomes this vicious cycle.
Yes.
The stress makes it even harder to communicate
It
effectively.
does.
And then you end up feeling isolated and misunderstood.
Right. Which just adds fuel to the fire.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's where this whole idea of transparency comes in.
Right.
One of the podcast guests said something that really resonated with me.
Okay.
They said that hiding financial information from your partner, it's like living separate lives.
Ooh.
Even if you share, a home, a bed, everything.
It's almost like a betrayal
It is.
on a fundamental level.
And it can be so damaging because it creates this feeling of not being fully seen or known by your partner,
Right.
which is essential for any healthy relationship.
Yeah, for sure. So we've talked about all the potential downsides, but there's also this really interesting flip side.
Mm-hmm.
This idea of the power of financial independence within a relationship.
Yes.
The research you sent actually suggested that this could be a major strength.
It absolutely can be.
Hmm.
I think it boils down to this. When both partners feel secure and confident
Yeah.
in their own financial standing,
Mm.
it creates a more balanced and equitable dynamic in the relationship.
So it's not about keeping your finances completely separate,
No.
but it's more about making sure that both people have a sense of autonomy and control over their own lives.
Exactly. And it can lead to more collaborative decision-making,
Mm.
reduce feelings of resentment or obligation, and it even fosters personal growth, which ultimately spills back into the relationship.
Wait, so you're saying being financially independent can actually make you a better partner?
I think so.
That's fascinating. I would love to hear more about that.
Well, one of the articles highlighted this really great story about a couple where the woman wanted to quit her corporate job
Yeah.
and start her own bakery because
Okay.
they were both financially stable.
Yeah.
Her husband could support her dream
Yeah.
without worrying about the risk.
Right.
They even used some of their savings to help her get started. It was a really beautiful example of how financial security allowed them to take a leap of faith together.
I love that. Instead of money being a source of stress, it became this tool for empowerment and growth,
Yes,
both individually and as a couple.
absolutely.
That's so inspiring.
And it gets at this idea that financial independence isn't about selfishness or keeping score.
Right.
It's about creating a foundation of strength and stability
Yeah.
that allows the relationship to flourish in other ways.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got kind of this theoretical framework, but you also sent over some real-life stories
Yeah.
that really bring these ideas to life.
Oh, I love those. They're so insightful.
They are.
Hearing from people who have actually navigated these waters, it gives us a much richer understanding.
Totally. One of the stories that really stuck with me was from a woman who had learned the hard way about the importance of discussing finances early on in a relationship.
Oh, yeah.
She had been with someone who had a ton of hidden debt,
Uh-oh.
and it ended up creating this huge rift between them.
That's unfortunately a pretty common situation.
It is.
Yeah, money can be such a taboo topic,
Yeah.
especially in those early stages of a relationship when everything is, hearts and flowers.
Right, exactly. But as this woman discovered, avoiding those conversations can have some serious consequences down the road.
They really can.
Yeah, she felt betrayed
Mm.
and misled,
Yeah.
and it ultimately led to the end of the relationship.
Wow.
It just sounds like a really painful experience.
It does, and it just highlights why open and honest communication about finances is so crucial,
Yeah.
even when it feels uncomfortable or awkward.
Yeah. Mhm.
It's about building trust and ensuring that you're both on the same page.
Right.
From the very beginning.
From the get-go.
Yeah. And speaking of, positive examples, there was also a story from a couple who found that setting shared financial goals actually brought them closer together.
Okay. Yeah, tell me more about that.
Well, they decided to create, a detailed budget together, and they started saving for a down payment on a house.
Oh, cool.
It wasn't always easy. They had to make some sacrifices, but they said that it gave them this amazing sense of shared purpose
I see.
and accomplishment.
That's cool. So it's like instead of money being this thing that's dividing them, it became like a unifying
Right.
element in their relationship.
Exactly. And it's a great reminder that money, when it's managed well, can actually be a bonding experience.
Yeah.
It's about working towards a common goal,
Right.
supporting each other's dreams, and then celebrating those milestones together.
Okay, so we've heard about the potential pitfalls and the really amazing possibilities.
Right.
But let's get practical here.
Okay.
For our listener out there who's trying to figure out this whole love and money thing, what are some tangible tips
Yeah.
for managing finances as a couple?
Well, that's a great question. And luckily, the material that you provided offers some really great guidance.
Awesome.
One of the most consistent pieces of advice is to prioritize communication.
Right.
And I don't just mean casual chats about the bills.
Right.
I'm talking about carving out dedicated time for intentional conversations
Mm-hmm.
about your financial goals, your concerns, even your just habits around money.
So money dates? Is that what they're calling it these days?
Exactly, yeah. Maybe it's a monthly check-in where you're reviewing your budget, you're talking about any upcoming expenses, or even just sharing how you feel about money in general.
Yeah.
The more open and honest you are with each other,
Right.
the less likely you are to run into surprises
Yeah.
or resentments down the line.
It's like preventing those little money annoyances from turning into huge blowups.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, another tip that came up repeatedly was setting shared financial goals.
Okay.
It doesn't have to
No.
be anything huge,
Right.
like buying a yacht or something like that.
Right.
It could be a saving for a vacation, paying off a specific debt, or even just setting aside money for fun experiences that you want to do together.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see how having that shared objective would create a sense of teamwork
Yes.
rather than feeling like you're constantly battling each other
Absolutely.
over money.
You're on the same side. You're both striving for something that you want.
Okay, so communication, shared goals. Got it.
Okay.
What's the third piece of the puzzle here?
This one's really important, especially for couples who have like very different financial styles.
Okay.
It's all about establishing boundaries
Okay.
and respecting each other's individual like habits and needs around money.
So acknowledging that one person might be like way more cautious
Right.
and the other person is like a little bit more, freewheeling when it comes to spending.
Yeah, exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot where both partners feel respected
Mm-hmm.
and empowered in their financial decisions,
Yeah.
even if their approaches are totally different.
And this is where that whole sense of individual financial independence within a relationship
Yes.
becomes so important, right?
It does.
It's like you can be a team, but you don't have to sacrifice your own
Right.
individual needs and goals.
One of the experts in the podcast actually used this metaphor
Oh,
of a financial Venn diagram.
that was interesting.
You have your individual circles
Okay.
representing like your personal finances and your goals.
I see.
And then there's this overlapping section in the middle,
Okay.
which represents like the shared finances
Gotcha.
and the shared goals.
I love that. So it's not about merging into this one giant financial blob. It's like finding that balance between individuality and togetherness.
Exactly. And that balance is going to look different for every couple.
Right.
There's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
It's about finding what works for you
Yeah.
in your unique circumstances.
Okay, so far we've been focusing a lot on the practical nuts and bolts
Mm-hmm.
aspects of managing money.
Right.
But I'm curious, what were some of the more subtle nuances that stood out to you from the materials?
Oh, that's a great question.
The stuff that's not always talked about but can have a huge impact on how couples relate to money.
One thing that really struck me is how much our own individual experiences with money really shape our attitudes and our behaviors in relationships.
Oh.
We all come to the table with different baggage, so to speak. Maybe
Yeah.
you grew up in a family where money was always tight.
Right.
Or maybe your parents were super organized with their finances and they instilled those values in you from a young age.
Mm-hmm.
And those early experiences can have a profound impact on how we approach finances as adults.
Right, like those money scripts we were talking about earlier.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's almost like your subconscious is running the show sometimes.
It really is.
Yeah.
And if we're not aware of those underlying influences, it can be really hard to have productive conversations about money
Right.
with our partners.
It's true.
We might be reacting from a place of old hurts or insecurities without even realizing it.
So part of the work is becoming more self-aware
Absolutely.
about your own financial psychology.
Yes.
Understanding where your beliefs and behaviors come from.
Right.
And then being able to communicate that to your partner.
Absolutely. And that can be scary. It's vulnerable to expose those tender spots.
It is.
But it's also incredibly powerful in
Yeah.
terms of building trust and intimacy.
It's like by understanding each other's backstories, you can have more empathy and compassion for each other's present day
Right.
struggles or quirks around money.
Yeah,
You're not just seeing the behavior, you're seeing the person behind the behavior.
exactly. And it allows you to approach those sometimes tough conversations
Yeah.
with a more curious and collaborative spirit rather than getting stuck in blame or defensiveness.
Okay, so we've got communication, self-awareness, shared goals, respecting boundaries.
Right.
What else can couples do to really create this solid financial foundation
Yeah.
for their relationship? Because let's be honest, even with the best intentions, things can get messy if you don't have a clear plan.
They can. It's so true. It's like trying to build a house without a blueprint.
Right.
You might end up with something, but it's probably not going to be very pretty or stable.
Or maybe just a pile of mismatched materials and a lot of frustration.
Exactly. And that's where having a system in place for how you're going to manage your finances together comes in.
Okay.
Whether it's a detailed budget or whether you have shared accounts or even just those regular money dates that we talked about to check in and make adjustments.
Yeah.
Finding a structure that works for both of you can make a world of difference.
So it's not just about talking about money. It's about having a concrete plan
Yes.
for how you're going to actually manage it together.
Exactly. And even though setting up a budget or figuring out how you're going to split the bills might not feel very romantic.
Yeah.
It can actually be a really powerful way to demonstrate your commitment
That's true.
to each other and to the relationship.
It's we're in this together, for richer or for poorer, remember. putting those words into action.
Right.
I like that.
Yeah. And that sense of solidarity can be incredibly comforting and reassuring,
Yeah,
especially when life throws those inevitable financial curveballs your way.
it does. Yeah.
Hello.
Okay, so we've got communication, self-awareness, shared systems, anything else that couples should keep in mind?
One final thought that really stood out to me from the materials
Okay.
is this idea of being proactive about financial planning.
Okay.
It's so easy to get caught up
Right.
in the day-to-day
Mm-hmm.
hustle of managing money and just reacting to whatever crisis or unexpected expense comes up.
It's like putting out fires all the time instead of actually building something solid.
Exactly. So taking the time to think about your long-term goals,
Okay.
both as individuals and as a couple,
Mm-hmm.
and then creating a plan to achieve those goals can make a huge difference.
What kind of goals are we talking about here?
It could be things like retirement planning or saving for your kids' education,
Mhm.
or even just like figuring out how you want to manage your finances as you get older.
Right.
It might not be the sexiest topic, but it's incredibly important.
It's about like taking ownership of your financial future,
Yes.
both as individuals and as a couple. You're not just letting life happen to you.
Right.
You're consciously
Yeah.
shaping your destiny.
You are.
That's pretty cool when you think about it.
And it doesn't have to be overwhelming.
Right?
Start small.
Mm.
Break down those big goals into smaller, manageable steps.
Yeah.
And celebrate your progress along the way.
I love that this whole conversation has really gotten me thinking about this bigger picture
Yeah.
of like financial literacy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about knowing how to like balance a checkbook
Right.
or invest in the stock market. It's about understanding
Yeah.
the emotional and psychological dynamics of money
Absolutely.
in relationships.
Financial literacy is so much more than just numbers and spreadsheets.
It is.
It's about developing a healthy and empowered relationship with money,
Yeah.
both individually and as a couple, and understanding how those individual relationships with money then intersect
Right.
and interact within the context of a romantic partnership.
And like we talked about earlier, sometimes that involves unpacking those deeply ingrained money scripts
Right.
that we might not even be aware of. It's a journey.
It is a journey.
It's a lifelong learning process.
And it's something that we all have to work at regardless of our income level
Right.
or our financial background. Because at the end of the day, money is just a tool.
Mm-hmm.
It's up to us to decide how we use that tool
Right.
to create a life that feels meaningful and fulfilling, both for ourselves
Yeah.
and for the people that we love.
Speaking of tools and resources, I'm curious,
Uh,
what are some specific things that couples can actually do to improve their financial communication and collaboration?
mhm.
Because, we've covered a lot of ground here. I'm sure our listeners like itching to take action.
I love that enthusiasm. And luckily, there are tons of amazing resources available these days.
Awesome.
One thing I always recommend
Okay.
is to seek out financial education workshops or courses, either online or in person. There are so many options out there.
Okay.
Everything from basic budgeting to investing to retirement planning.
It's like learning a new language together.
It is. It's like learning the language of finance.
Right.
And just like learning any new language, it takes time,
Right.
patience, and a willingness to make mistakes along the way.
Yeah.
But the payoff can be huge.
Yeah.
Imagine being able to talk about money with your partner in a way that feels clear, calm, and constructive.
I'm feeling calmer already just thinking about it.
Right.
It just seems like it would open up so many possibilities for like creating that shared future
Yes.
that feels really aligned
It does.
with your values and your dreams.
Now, another resource that can be really helpful, especially if you're hitting some roadblocks in your communication
Okay.
or feeling overwhelmed by some of those like emotional undercurrents we've been talking about,
Right.
is financial therapy.
Okay, I've heard of this, but I don't totally understand what it is.
Yeah.
Did you break it down?
It's basically a specialized type of therapy
Right.
that focuses specifically on the emotional and relational aspects of money.
Gotcha.
So it's not about like crunching numbers or creating a budget.
Okay.
It's about unpacking all that baggage
Right.
that we bring to the table when it comes to finances.
So it's like having a neutral third party who can kind of help you navigate
Yes.
those tricky conversations
Yeah, absolutely.
and find solutions that work for both of you.
Sometimes we just need that outside perspective to help
Yeah.
us see things more clearly or
Right.
break through those ingrained patterns.
And I bet it's incredibly validating to have someone acknowledge that these money issues
Yes.
are totally normal.
They are so
You're
normal.
not alone in struggling with them.
Money is so intertwined with our deepest fears
Yeah,
and insecurities.
totally.
So it's no wonder that it creates tension in relationships.
Yeah, for sure.
Having a financial therapist who understands those dynamics can be game-changing.
It's like having a financial coach in your corner,
Yes.
cheering you on, helping you stay accountable to your goals.
I love that analogy because ultimately this is a team sport.
It is.
It's about supporting each other, celebrating your wins, and learning from your setbacks together.
And remembering that it's a marathon, not a sprint.
It is.
It really is.
Building a healthy financial partnership takes time,
Yeah.
effort,
Mm-hmm.
and a whole lot of love.
Okay, so we've talked about communication, self-awareness, shared systems, financial education, financial therapy, humor,
Yes.
importance of non-financial activities.
It's a lot.
That's a pretty comprehensive toolkit.
I think we've covered all our bases.
Yeah.
But remember,
Yeah.
it's not about trying to do everything perfectly
Right.
or all at once.
It's about, like, taking those small steps,
Yes.
experimenting with different strategies, finding what works best for you.
And remember, it's a journey, not a destination.
Yeah, well said. And sometimes the most important thing is just being kind to yourselves.
Especially when things get tough.
Absolutely. Because, let's face it, life is messy.
It is.
Relationships are complicated.
They are.
And money can be a real pain in the wallet.
But even amidst all the messiness and the complexity,
Yeah.
there's also a lot of beauty and joy to be found.
That's what we should be striving for.
Absolutely.
Create those relationships that are built on love and trust.
Yes.
And a shared sense of purpose.
And to remember that, at the end of the day, money is just a tool to help us achieve those bigger goals.
Well said.
Okay.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here today.
Yeah.
We've kind of explored the complexities of love and money. We've unpacked the challenges and the opportunities.
Yeah.
And hopefully we've equipped our listener with a pretty awesome toolkit
Yeah.
for building a healthier and more fulfilling
Yes.
financial partnership.
Yeah.
What are some final thoughts that you want to leave them with
Okay.
before we wrap up?
Well, I think the most important message is just that it's okay to ask for help. You know, if you are struggling with financial communication,
Yeah.
or you're feeling overwhelmed by the complexities of managing money together,
Right.
there are resources available.
Like the financial education workshops, financial therapy,
Exactly.
all that good stuff.
Don't be afraid to reach out to trusted friends, family members, or financial advisors
Okay.
for guidance and support.
It's like that old African proverb. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
I love that. It's so true, especially when it comes to love and money.
It is.
We're all in this together, and there's no shame in asking for help along the way.
And you know what? Sometimes just having that open and honest conversation with your partner
Yes.
can be incredibly empowering.
It can.
It's like you're taking control of your financial future together.
And that sense of shared agency can be a real game changer for a relationship.
Okay, so we've talked about asking for help,
Yeah.
taking control, remembering that we're in this together.
Right.
Anything else you want to add before we sign off?
Just one final thought, and it's a simple one, but I think it's really important. Be kind to yourselves.
I love that
Yeah.
because, let's be real, this stuff can be stressful,
It can.
confusing, frustrating.
It can be all those things.
Yeah.
So give yourselves permission to make mistakes,
Right.
to learn as you go, and to celebrate your wins,
Mm-hmm.
no matter how small they may seem.
And remember that you're not alone.
You're no...
Every couple faces financial challenges.
At some point.
At some point.
And there's no shame in seeking out support and guidance.
Well said.
Yep.
With a little bit of effort and a whole lot of love,
Yes.
you can build a financial partnership that is strong, resilient, and supportive.
That's the goal.
Now that's a message I can get behind. Well, folks, that's a wrap
Yes.
for our deep dive into love and money. I hope you guys found this conversation as insightful
Yes.
and empowering as I did.
It's been a pleasure exploring these topics with you.
Likewise.
Yeah.
And, as always, we're so grateful for your thoughtful questions and your willingness to dive deep with us.
We appreciate you guys.
And remember, if you're looking for more resources
Yes.
or support on this topic, be sure to check out the show notes.
Yeah.
We'll have links to some of the things we mentioned.
Absolutely.
Be sure to tune in next time
Yes.
for another fascinating
Deep dive.
deep dive.
Yes.
Until then, keep those conversations flowing.
Keep talking.
And remember to be kind to yourselves
Be kind to yourselves
and each other.
and each other. We'll see you next time.
You know, it's amazing to think about everything we've covered in this deep dive.
Yeah, we really have.
From like those money scripts and financial compatibility to communication, shared goals, everything.
A lot to think about.
Oh, and let's not forget those stories about couples who are like really killing it
Oh, yeah, those were great.
when it comes to this whole love and money thing.
Absolutely.
They were such great examples
Yeah.
of how being open about money and working together
Hmm.
can actually bring you closer as a couple. Like, remember that couple from the podcast who made it a habit to talk about finances every Sunday morning?
Yeah, I loved that.
I thought that was such a great idea.
Me too, just having that dedicated time
Yeah.
to connect. It doesn't have to be this big formal thing.
Right, exactly.
It's just about creating a space for a conversation where you can be open and honest about money
Yeah.
without judgment or blame.
And I think that's key, right? Just making those conversations normal.
Yes.
So money doesn't become this big scary thing
Right, it's not taboo.
that you're afraid to talk about.
Exactly.
It's like anything else in a relationship.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
more you communicate, the better you understand each other.
It's true.
You know, your needs, your priorities.
And those can change
right.
over time.
Italy. Yeah.
So it's important to be flexible and adapt as needed.
What works 5 years ago maybe doesn't work now.
Right.
Especially if big things have changed.
Exactly. Yeah.
A new job, you know, maybe you have a family now, all that stuff.
Right. Or your values have shifted.
Yeah. That could happen too.
Yeah.
It's important to be aware of those things and make sure that your, financial plan is still working
Absolutely.
for both of you.
And, that brings me to something else
Okay.
that was really emphasized in the material we looked at. Sometimes you got to call on the professionals.
Yes.
Like, don't be afraid to seek professional guidance.
Right.
If you need it.
So a financial advisor, maybe a therapist,
Yeah.
or even like a mediator if things are getting really, really heated.
Exactly. Sometimes you just need that outside perspective
Yeah.
to help you sort things out.
It can be hard to see the big picture
Yeah, when you're in the thick of it.
when you're so caught up in your own head.
Yeah, or in those emotional reactions.
A neutral third party can be really helpful
Totally.
to find solutions that work for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, what's a good analogy? Like having a financial Sherpa
Oh, I like that.
to guide you through the treacherous mountain pass.
Yeah, because let's be honest, finances can be a minefield.
Oh, yeah.
Even for the strongest relationships.
It's true.
And, sometimes we all need a little help navigating
Yeah, we
the
do.
little tricky spots.
We do.
And remember, asking for help is not weak.
No.
It actually shows strength
Yeah.
and commitment.
Right, to making things work.
Yeah, exactly.
It's realizing that you don't have to have all the answers yourself
You don't.
and that it's okay to get support.
It's more than okay.
And you know what? Sometimes just being open with your partner
Yeah.
and having that honest conversation
It can be so powerful.
is all you need. It's
Yeah.
like you're both taking control
You are.
of your future together.
Right, and that shared agency,
Yeah,
that can change everything.
it can. Okay, so we've talked about asking for help, taking control, being in this together. Anything else you want to add before we say goodbye?
Just one last thought.
Okay.
Be kind to yourselves.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, because this stuff can be tough.
It can be stressful, confusing.
Yeah, all of that.
Yeah, frustrating.
Give yourselves permission to make mistakes.
Yes.
Learn as you go. Celebrate the wins, even the small ones.
Yeah. Don't forget to celebrate those wins.
Yeah.
And remember, you're not alone in this.
You're so not alone.
Every couple goes through it.
They do.
No shame in getting some help if you need it.
Absolutely.
It's true. With a little bit of effort and, a lot of love.
A lot of love.
You can build a relationship that's strong and resilient
Yes.
when it comes to finances.
You can.
That's a message I think we can all get behind.
I agree.
All right, folks. That is it for our deep dive into love and money.
Oh, wow. That went fast.
I hope you learned some stuff.
I hope so.
I hope you feel a little more empowered
Yeah, me too.
to tackle these topics.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was a pleasure talking about all this with you.
Likewise, I always enjoy these conversations.
And as always, thank you to you guys, our amazing listeners, for sending in those thoughtful questions
Yes, thank you.
and for diving deep with us.
We appreciate you guys.
If you want more resources, check out the show notes.
Definitely.
We have links to some of the stuff we talked about.
Yeah, all the good stuff.
And be sure to tune in next time
Yes.
for another great deep dive.
Can't wait.
Until then, keep talking about this stuff.
Yeah, keep those conversations going.
And remember to be kind to yourselves.
Always.
and each other.
And each other. See you next time.
Bye, everyone.